Well, this is our fifth webinar, which is part of our monthly webinar series talking about green hydrogen. And, every session, we have a lot more participation and we're covering a diverse range of topics. And this particular session is going to focus on applications in steel. And as most of you all know, steel is one of the, hard to abate industries where you do not have an alternative to some of the processes in the steel making process where green hydrogen could serve as an important factor for decarbonization. So the Green Hydrogen Organization, we were established 2.5 years ago to focus on enabling this entire industry. And in India, we've been quite active over the last 18 months, working with several state governments, industry, civil society, and institutions to help promote green hydrogen and its technologies. And it's such a privilege to have so many of you all join us every month in our roundtables, our webinars, some of our events as well. And we truly appreciate your support and patronage towards the work that we're doing. I want to invite Deepak Yadav from CEW. So Deepak and his organization, they've been doing tremendous work, leading some of the policy work in India, leading some of the reports that have been coming out on the sector. And I think Deepak is going to give us an outline of what the industry is and also set context for this webinar. So Deepak, over to you, please.
So thank you so much, Nishant, for inviting me to this webinar. I am Deepak Yadav. I am a senior program lead at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. And today I'll be presenting just three briefing slides on applications of green hydrogen in the steel sector. To those of you who don't know us, I represent the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We are a not-for-profit public policy research institution based out of New Delhi. We use data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach to explain and change the use, reuse, and misuse of resources. As you can see on the slide itself, there are 15 focus areas that we largely work on. I work on in the industrial sustainability team at CW, but there are other multiple teams that we work on various aspects related to decarbonization of the economy. Now, if we look at the current production processes for steel in India, there are primarily two, primary iron making processes in India. The first is using blast furnaces, which are largely owned and operated by the large boys or the big boys of steel industry in India. The second production process is using rotary kilns, which are normally operated by smaller players, most of them, not all of them. Now the key thing here is that most of the current iron making, primary iron making technology in India, they are dependent on use of coal. So blast furnaces, for example, they use coking coal, which is again imported, or in fact all of the coking coal that we use in blast furnaces in India is imported. There is also rotary kiln, which also uses partially imported coal, partially domestic coal, and but these are primarily all coal-based iron making production pathways in India. A strategic fuel for transition towards green hydrogen will be natural gas based shaft furnaces, and I say that this is a strategic fuel because with the use of shaft furnaces, so if you invest let's say around 1300 to 1500 crore setting up 1 MTP of shaft furnace, you can have the same shaft furnace, but as and when the cost of green hydrogen reduces in the future, you can start blending in green hydrogen. So you can start with, let's say, 100% natural gas use in shaft furnaces, and as the cost of green hydrogen reduces, you can start blending in 5% green hydrogen, you can start blending in 10%, 15%, and gradually, as the cost of green hydrogen achieves parity with that of natural gas, then you can easily or seamlessly transition to 100% green hydrogen. Therefore, the key decarbonization strategy for India for greenfield capacity expansion will be not to invest in blast furnaces and rotary kilns, but to start investing or rather thinking about natural gas based shaft furnaces so that we can eventually transition to green hydrogen based steel making. That is the transition strategy. Now, green hydrogen broadly, it finds applications across four sectors in the iron and steel industry. The first is green hydrogen can be used in blast furnaces, so which is at TRL 5 globally. So in globally, there are pilot scale demonstrations. So Thyssen Group, for example, it has injected green hydrogen in one of its blast furnaces and has tested it for over 24 hours. Nippon Steel, they have an experimental blast furnace. Experimental blast furnace is a replica, or a lower capacity blast furnace, but it operates, in principle, it operates similarly to the blast furnaces. But you can do all kind of experimental work there. So Nippon Steel, they have actually tested hydrogen injection in blast furnaces, and they have estimated around 22% emissions reduction over a normal blast furnace that operates with coal alone. In Indian scenario, I think most of you might have read news articles recently. So Tata Steel, they have injected about 6 kgs of hydrogen. 6 kgs of hydrogen is a very small quantity, so it means around 3 to 4% of the total energy which is required for operating a blast furnace. But nevertheless, they have injected 6 kgs of hydrogen in blast furnace. They have reduced the coke consumption by around 10%, and they have sort of reduced the CO2 emissions by around 7 to 10%. So this is what is happening globally on hydrogen injection in coal-based blast furnaces. Hydrogen can also be blended in natural gas-based shaft furnaces. In fact, the proof of concept of blending in hydrogen in natural gas-based shaft furnaces was demonstrated in 1990s, where 90% of the natural gas which is used for producing iron or DRI was replaced with hydrogen. They didn't use green hydrogen that time because green hydrogen was very expensive at that time. But the proof of concept does exist globally. In fact, as we speak, there are multiple initiatives that are talking about transitioning to green hydrogen using natural gas-based shaft furnaces, and the projects have been listed here: Salcos, Hamburg H2 project. There are multiple projects which have been very well documented in the report which was released by the Ministry of Steel in the previous month. In India, so, and this is basis the information which is available. So JSW, for example, JSW Energy, they are planning to set up a 3.6 KTPA green hydrogen production facility using 25 megawatts of renewable energy, and they plan to start blending in that green hydrogen in one of their shaft furnaces. In fact, based on the information which is available in public domain, it is expected to be operational by March 2025. Right? So hydrogen can be used in blast furnaces. Hydrogen can be used in natural gas-based shaft furnaces. There is also something which is called as fossil-free steel making. I think the hybrid folks, they have sort of created or coined this terminology. So basically, fossil-free steel making involves using 100% hydrogen, and this hydrogen has to be green hydrogen. So therefore, it's 100% green hydrogen-based DRI production, and the technical feasibility of this pilot plant has been demonstrated. I understand there are some operational issues that they are facing, but nevertheless, the technical feasibility has been demonstrated on a pilot scale. Now, what is happening on the third aspect here, which is at TRL5, that there are multiple other initiatives which are happening globally. So there's H2 Green Steel that talks about setting up million MTP or million tons per annum, which is commercially a commercial scale 100% hydrogen based DRI project, and there are other projects which are also on the horizon. The fourth aspect is hydrogen use in horizon technologies, and these are basically low TRI technologies, the proof of which is being demonstrated in laboratories. Nothing has been demonstrated on a pilot scale, but then there are multiple options that are being explored globally. For example, POSCO and Prime Metal, they are working on a technology called as FINEX process, where they will use iron ore fine and coal for production of iron, but then they plan to start blending in green hydrogen as well. So that flexibility of blending in green hydrogen does exist. There are other projects globally which are happening. For example, HYFOR and Sustainable Steel. University of Utah is also working on this on new horizon technologies where green hydrogen can be used for iron production. IIMT back home, IIMT has also demonstrated on a laboratory scale the feasibility of using hydrogen plasma smelting reduction for production of DRI or iron, right? So this is what is happening globally. So basically, two pathways which can be or commercially can be done on a commercial scale: hydrogen used in blast furnaces, hydrogen used in shaft furnaces. On pilot scale, we can say there is one pilot which is there globally, which is hybrid, or that uses 100% hydrogen-based DRI, and then there are multiple options that have been explored. Although these are on laboratory scale. Which brings me to the final slide, and here we look at what are the basic techno-economics of hydrogen injection across three major pathways. So first, let's talk about hydrogen injection in blast furnaces. So roughly, and this is again coming from Ministry of Steel report, about 15 kgs of hydrogen can be injected per ton of crude steel. Tata Steel demonstrated about 6 kgs of hydrogen injection, and there are also other studies that say this number can be increased from 15 to 28. There are on hydrogen injection through shaft, for example, there the amount of hydrogen that can be injected is significantly higher. Nevertheless, we'll assume a conservative 15 kgs of hydrogen injection per ton of crude steel. So which means all the entire blast furnace capacity in India, it can uptake around 1.17 or around 1.2 million tons per annum of green hydrogen. Our national green hydrogen mission has set a target of producing 5 million tons per annum of green hydrogen. So you can relate the consumption volumes which is possible in blast furnaces in India. Now, in case of blast furnaces, the biggest challenge is with injection of 15 kgs of hydrogen, the emission reduction that we can have is just about 8 to 10%, which is a very small number, if you look at the pan-India scale, right? So 8 to 10% hydrogen reduction, emission reduction by injecting around 1.2 mtpa of hydrogen. The biggest challenge is cost. Why is this not happening? Because the break-even cost of hydrogen for injection in blast furnaces is sub $1 per kg. So we talk about one target on green hydrogen, but this is even below that particular target. And therefore, hydrogen injection in blast furnace might commercially materialize once the cost of green hydrogen reduces significantly, and there is certain carbon tax that is also levied. The second option is on hydrogen injection in natural gas based shaft furnaces. And here when I look at this option, I'm basically talking about the existing shaft furnace capacity in India, which are using either natural gas or other gaseous fuels. It could be coke oven gas or any other industrial off gas. And since these shaft furnaces are like very old vintages, we talked to a few industries and we assume that around 60 to 65% of the natural gas which is consumed in these natural gas based shaft furnaces, they can be replaced with green hydrogen. Therefore, assuming 60 to 65% replacement, we can start consuming around 42 kgs of hydrogen per ton of crude steel. The shaft furnace installed capacity in India is very low. It's around 12 million tons, around that value. And therefore, the total hydrogen consumption which is possible is only 0.4 million tons. Now, the good thing is, unlike blast furnaces, with green hydrogen injection, about 55 to 60% of the total emissions from the natural gas route can be mitigated. The residual emissions can be mitigated if we start switching from grid electricity to renewable electricity, and there will be some amount of emissions which will be left because the hydrogen is not replacing natural gas on a 100% basis. The break-even price of hydrogen on natural gas, replace natural gas is around 0.75 to $2 a kg. It depends on what is the price of incumbent, fuel, which is natural gas. So for $8 per MMBTU price of natural gas, the replacement cost is around 0.75. And if it goes to 16 to $18 per MMBTU, then hydrogen breaks even at $2 a kg. The third option is hydrogen based shaft furnace, which is basically 100% hydrogen based shaft furnace, which has been demonstrated globally, the hybrid plant I'm referring to, but it has certain challenges. So for example, a hybrid plant will need around 28 or 2.8 gigawatts of renewable electricity per MTPA of installed capacity. The hydrogen requirement varies, around 50 from 55 to 70 KTPA per MTPA of DRI output. The key factor is the capex requirement. So typically, when we talk about blast furnaces, the ballpark capex requirement is less than $1 billion per MTPA, around 0.8 to 0.9 billion dollars. Whereas for 100% hydrogen-based shaft furnaces, the capex requirement is around $3 billion per MTPA, which is almost, which exceeds 3 times that of integrated steel plant. And then there are also, corresponding cost implications. For example, using 100% hydrogen-based, DRI unit, your cost of iron or cost of steel that you get is around 50 to 60% more expensive compared to that what we get from the blast furnace route. So those are the challenges that can be associated with hydrogen-based shaft furnaces. I just have 3 slides to present, Nishant. So I'd like to hand over the stage back to you.
Thanks very much, Deepak. And I like what Shweta asked in the group, which is, what does TCS stand for? And if there are little, things like this that you want clarification, please write it down in the chat, because the idea and the goal of this webinar is to educate the larger audience on where we can apply green steel or green hydrogen in all of these industries. Well, Deepak, I think you've highlighted quite a lot of important points on this in this presentation of yours. But clearly, the steel industry produces almost 3.5 billion tons of CO2, right? Every year. And in India alone, our per ton, emissions from steel is highest in the world, between 2.5 to 2.7 kgs of carbon emissions per kg of steel. So I think we have to do quite a lot. And I think as we go into this webinar, we'll hear from some of the industry experts on what the government has done and what steps companies are taking to decarbonize this. But of course, if you have more questions on some of these, these different steel making pathways, please feel free to, put it in the chat box. We'll answer all these questions as we go into the panel discussion. But before we go into the panel discussion, let me, introduce Professor Dasappa. Professor Dasappa has been, one of the leading minds here in India who's been promoting biomass-based pathways for green hydrogen, and he's quite a pioneer in the work that he's undertaking. But Professor, I'll leave it to you, to give a small introduction about yourself, and then we can go through your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for this. I think I would like to just mention saying that while I have been working in the area of biomass, I mean, basically it's a combustion gas, I mean, of solid, liquid, and gaseous fuels. And over the last 3 decades, we have been venturing into something which this country really requires kind of attention, unlike the kind of other resources which have got all benefits through the policies which have taken place. Keeping that in mind, I'll just introduce the technology what we are trying to look at. See, I just thought I should just say that yes, everybody is interested, like what was presented by the previous speaker. As there is quite a bit of interest which is taking shape in terms of what needs to be done. How do we really look at? Only thing is, major emphasis has been on making sure that we generate hydrogen through electrolysis. That's one route which has been there, and one is not against, because the kind of things what happened on solar and wind in this country compared to other resources seems to be taking a pathway along this direction. And internationally, if you really look at, yes, people have been looking into various aspects of how do we decarbonize. There is very serious contenders with respect to the technology itself, and there are a few technology which have also been adopted in this country, and maybe a couple of them which are listed here is something which you saw the reduction in carbon footprint significantly when you really move from a solid fuel to a gaseous species. I think that's something which is very, very evident, and people have been trying to see whether they will be able to reduce the footprint further by using hydrogen. I think hydrogen coming from various sources is what people have been really looking at. And there are small spurts of things happening in terms of using an naturally available substance called biomass. The reason why I'm calling this one, if you really look at renewable hydrogen or green is the recent concept which people have been talking about. In terms of renewable, there are only two strong contenders with respect to hydrogen element being there as a part of their natural maybe resource. Is one is water, second one is biomass. Water, through electrolysis you get hydrogen. The other one is through the other process which I'm going to introduce to you. People have been talking about biomass in various other countries. Probably I think it has not taken shape as much as what we intend to do in India. I think this is something which probably we can discuss. And from whatever I should also confess, say that it's only the last 6 8 months we have been venturing into hydrogen or steel sector through the biomass route. I mean in terms of the overall process, we have understood significantly over the last 6 months, and we believe that there is a significant amount of I should say penetration which can be done. And keeping this in mind, I think there are maybe projections which have been cited saying that it's something similar to what was presented earlier by Mr. Deepak, saying that yes, unless until you really peg your cost very, very low, you will not be able to really look at what can happen. And here we are trying to look at reductant, not exactly our hydrogen. It could be a combination of CO and H2, which is also very, very critical in terms of the overall process, what people have been looking at. See, for example, this plot shows that this is what is the hydrogen cost which is required, which was sort of the number which was projected for decarbonization. I'm just trying to bring out the reductant price in Indian rupees per megajoule. If we can be within this one, probably it can become very, very competitive within this box, what I am trying to put. Say less than about 2 rupees, maybe about 1.5 rupees per megajoule is something which we can keep it as a reference. The process what I'm looking at is taking a solid fuel. People who have been accustomed to looking at some of the gasification of coal, I think this is something similar, except that this is going to be completely green, being a resource which is renewable by nature. And the solid fuel gets converted to gaseous fuel. On this platform, in terms of generating electricity and using it in a gas turbine, we have done quite a bit of work. We have done technology transfer across the globe, wherein including somebody like GE has taken technology from IISc. We had deployed this within India and outside India to within Europe and various other locations across the globe. And proud to say that generally technology comes from north to south. Here we have been able to do from south to north too on that platform. But unfortunately, the power generation things did not take off as much as what this country could hold on to and probably carry forward. Maybe for a variety of reasons, policies were not as encouraging as what it is today. Today, I think even on this platform, what I'm showing you right now, there are various applications wherein we are looking at decarbonization because of the CBAM coming in. Now, over the last decade, we have been really moving away because power was not the kind of things. We have moved into fuels and chemicals wherein hydrogen and syngas becomes very, very important in the context of what we have been looking at in steel sector. Plus, probably we are also looking at downstream fuels like alcohols or ammonia or various other things. This is just to give you the technology. Here we take biomass as the biomass could be any of the resources which you see, the coconut shells to corn cobs or any loose material converted into briquettes. I think this is the range of things which it can happen, and it's one of those systems which is agnostic to fuel. A combination of these or independent of any of these fuels can be used, and probably it generates a hydrogen-rich syngas depending upon the end use based on whatever we have got exposed to the steel sector over the last 6-8 months. We believe this syngas is good enough to go as a reductant into the steel process. I think this is something which we are now seriously contemplating, and we also had an occasion to visit the Vijayanagar plant here, and we saw the Corex plant, what is generating the gas, and it's very easy to strip off this CO2, which can become maybe a carbon sequestration, and you get similar gas which goes into the so-called hydrogen-based or natural gas-based hydrogen generation system into the vertical shaft kiln. I think a combinations can be real quick, and this is where I think we have, and we can also generate based on the controlled approach. You can also generate some carbon which can go back to the processes what we have been looking at. The greatest strength of this process is a range of compositions can be generated, which may or may not be maybe an attraction for steel sector. But if we are looking at downstream chemicals, this becomes very, very important. It's just to show the flexibility with respect to the thing. Here we have been looking at a gasification system, which you saw. It generates hydrogen rich in gas. We have technology to separate hydrogen. One stream can become, already we have demonstrated a fuel cell grade hydrogen for a range of biomasses, which can go into a fuel cell. And we have, as I told you, we have been looking at methanol, SAF, ammonia. These are all the derivatives which can be really looked at to look at how to carry hydrogen into various downstream processes for conversion. And typically, you really look at a fuel cell grade, about 15 kgs of biomass is required for every kg of hydrogen, which may not be the case when we really want to look at the syngas, which can go into the so-called steel sector. Here, as I told you, we can generate this gas, and this gas can go into the separation. CO2 can be separated, and we get a H2 to CO ratio greater than 3. and with about 30 megajoules, it's an ideal process to substitute the so-called natural gas in the vertical shaft kiln. And we can also use this as a sort of replacement to coal in various other downstream processes. I think based on the technology which is going to be available in some cases wherein there is a cold roll milling which is take place in the steel sector, maybe where the requirements are extremely high purity of hydrogen. I think even that can be achieved through this process. That means there is a pathway wherein you can get green hydrogen through bioresources which are available in this country. And some bit of additional fundamental work which we have to do and we have looked into is related to with the presence of CO and the H2, there could be a trade-off because of the exothermicity and endothermicity which happens, and probably I think we should be able to deal much better in terms of the outputs and various other things which can really happen. Maybe some fundamental study which we have already initiated, but to start with, the technology is available for us to move into the space for dealing with the so-called decarbonization of steel sector. This experience is wherein it's a typical thing which we will see when in any other things you generate a gas with CO2 removal, it can go into vertical shaft kiln, and as I've shown you that H2 to CO ratio can be controlled to get whatever is required as a process. And in the technology package itself, you have a syngas generator, you have a gas conditioned system wherein you will be able to really remove everything as pure a gas as you want, and it goes through a compression cycle wherein you have a PSA wherein CO2 can be removed, and we have the pure hydrogen, which can go into the vertical shaft kiln and or any other things. We have also been contemplating in terms of using this to a very large scale activity which our country has been really doing in rotary kilns. We believe there have been some very interesting approaches which were done maybe way back in the 80s, which has not been really revisited by various groups. We have been really looking at these things, and I think the industry needs to see these demonstrations, which we are very keen to really look at how do we take it forward to that stage. The Alice Chalmers system, wherein it was designed to take solid gas and liquid as a fuel there, and we believe many of those things which we have, I have shown you the gas, can go into these things, and probably a very simple modification to the entire system is what we have been looking at. And maybe there are other options for us to see how we will be able to do under firing the entire bed to see how we can replace the so-called the coal which is going into the rotary kiln, also reduce the entire process. I think there are significant opportunities available there. The salient features of this technology is a 24 by 7 operations, multi-fuel capabilities as a reductant, and we get some biochar which can go back to the so-called their overall process, and it can show once we remove the carbon, probably it can show a negative carbon footprint, and it's an indigenous technology, and probably when government of India is looking at various things including the indigenous technology and trying to provide support to the farmers and various other things, this can make a big impact in terms of doing that. With this, I will leave it at this stage, and it can be as techno-economically feasible compared to a Corex gas in terms of generating the gas, which can go as a reductant, because broadly some numbers are made available. It can be as competent as that, with a caveat saying that it is going to be green. And I think this is where I would like to stop. I mean, looking forward for maybe detailed discussions as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dasapa. I think you've highlighted also, the historical journey we've taken, in this whole sector. And of course, hydrogen and biomass based or green hydrogen serves as a big component in decarbonizing the sector. And it's quite warming to see all the innovations that you're working on to adopt biomass into this. And clearly India has a lot of potential for this. But before we move on to the panel discussion, I'd like to introduce our other panelists. We have Rahul. Rahul Singh is the Chief Technology Officer at Hygenco.
So my name is Rahul Singh, and as I was introduced, I am the Chief Technology Officer in Hygenco. I joined this company when the company was formed So I've seen the journey, and as Nishant said, that we are I mean, a pure hydrogen company with real operating projects under our belt. Okay, so that's in short what Hygienco does, and definitely, I mean, steel industry is uh, one avenue where we started with our first project.
Wonderful. Thanks for that small introduction, Rahul. And next, can I bring in Mr. Naveen Alawat? Mr. Naveen is from Jindal Steel, and they've been, they're one amongst the 8 large producers of steel in India, and they're in fact embarking on a lot of green initiatives within their group. Mr. Naveen, if you could introduce yourself and also your company, please.
Thanks, Nishant, for having me here. My name is Naveen Elawat. I had Power 2X vertical for the Jindal Steel Group. So we are the fourth largest steel manufacturer in India, and basically the sector comes under hard to abate. But we are pushing, or I would say, firing from all the cylinders to ensure that we'll be net zero by 2047, close to 23 odd years before India will become net zero. So that's where I think we are from, and we are working basically on multiple pathways, not about hydrogen, which is called the silver bullet, but as Professor Dasappa has rightly mentioned, there are multiple levers before we hit this silver bullet, because the economics are also the things that we have to also keep in mind. We cannot put green hydrogen at $5 or $6 per kg or $7 per kg. There are levers, realistic and pragmatic levers on the ground, which will really help us or take us the entire iron steel sector to reach where we are aspiring for. So, but happy to take more questions as we move along. Thank you.
And Naveen, as we begin this, let me just start with you. I'm glad you caught on to some of Mr. Professor Dasapa's remarks. It is clear that before we start, using new pathways or green hydrogen to reduce emissions from the steel sector, there are several proponents or components within, the current processes that can reduce emissions and increase efficiency. So if you could, speak about some of these factors to enlighten the audience, please.
Absolutely, Nishant. I think Deepak has also briefly spoke on this point, but then yes, see, I always say this that we have to walk before we start running. So the walking strategy is super critical and super important for iron and steel industry, especially in India, because we are still at if we talk about the per capita consumption of steel, we are still at 98 kilos, right? The world average is 220 kilos. And as per our 2030 steel mission, we are we are aspiring for 160 odd kilos of steel. This is where we are actually aiming for. Now, what does it mean? It clearly means that there will be capacity addition, steel addition that is going to happen, and by 2030, as per the National Steel Mission, we are going to add 300 million tons of steel capacity. And because of the growing demand, because of the growing infrastructure that country is going to add. And when I say infrastructure, from railways to the bridges to the automobile, everywhere, I think steel is the basic proponent of the infrastructural journey, or the journey that we are all are aspiring. By 2047, we have to become a developed country. So steel is going to play a very, very important role. So, so what we have to do? Very simple. We have to maintain the carbon intensity where we are today. If we have to go for a consistent and sustainable way, even if we are maintaining by by adding or by augmenting more capacities, if we are maintaining the same carbon intensity, I think it is nothing less than a miracle. Now, starting from the operational efficiencies. Now, the levers that we are with the entire iron steel industry is banking on is operational efficiency. Operational efficiency is like how we can do the beneficiation, take the how we can utilize the fines, how we can convert the waste into wonders. When I say waste into wonder, it is about utilizing the off gas coming from the blast furnaces, from BOF gases, from coke oven gases, and utilize within our plant. How we can use the co-products that is going out or being produced from our facilities to again reuse within our facility as fuel, which will have a direct impact on the scope 3 emissions. Coming to next point is about how we can maximize the resource. This is super important. We have to maximize the resources. So how we maximize the resources is that how we can set up the supply chain, how we can make our supply chain resilient. Because to make 1 ton of steel, we have to bring 1.8 tons of iron ore into our premises. We have to bring cooking coal within our premises. We have to also bring a lot of limestone. We have to also bring a lot of thermal coal. So how to make this sort of supply chain resilient, where we can put all the resources within our vicinity and basically transport all these items within our facility through, let's say, iron ore pipelines. So R is a company basically right now which is busy putting up this 220-kilometer pipeline from our iron ore mines from Badbil Angul plant. Out of that, 170 kilometers have been completed, and with the remaining 50 kilometers will be completed within the next 6 to 7 months, right? So this is the first one. Second, the coal mines that we have within our vicinity, close to 13 to 15 kilometers within radius of our plant, we are going to bring the coal within our facility with the help of pipe conveyor, with the help of the conveyor, normal conveyors. It will reduce the massive footprint under scope 3. When we'll be bringing these items through the rail or road with all help of all the trucks. So these are the two things which are very, very important if we have to make this thing. So resource maximization, it is super important if we have to reduce the specific consumption. Because see, per ton of steel, the only thing where we have to focus right now is how we can optimize the iron ore consumption, coking coal, and this can only be done with the help of beneficiation or with the help of how to make the supply chain resilient. So this is where all the steel makers are pushing their maximum energy. The third point is basically about the deployment of the tertiary or the turbine recovery turbines that we have, TRT, the off gases that we can utilize or valorize coming out from the blast furnace. Also, basically the deployment of coke dry quenching system. So that is also critical if we have to reduce the intensity. So in all the fronts, there have been a significant push, and we, as a company, are leading the way. A third point is also very important. That is how you can accelerate the deployment of digital IT, how you can enable digital IT to sort of make your processes much more advanced, much more smart, and much more efficient. So these are the three things that is actually a quick win. And I strongly believe that the incremental capex to have or to deploy or to implement these three buckets is hardly 2 to 3%, wherein the upside is close to 10 to 15% in terms of the carbon intensity. Now, the second bucket where we are focusing is about how we can use renewable energy in our operation, right? That is super important, because India as a country, that the kind of maturity that we have seen in deployment or commissioning of the solar farms, how we have moved within last 10 years, we have moved from basically 3 gigawatt to 40 gigawatt now within 1 decade. Same, more or less, same for wind. Today, if we add solar and wind, we are close to 153 gigawatt, right? The penetration of renewable energy in our grid, it has reached from 3 to 4% to right now 41 to 43%, right? So this is where I think the focus is very. The market has become quite mature, and that is where we have to use our renewable power in our operations, which will help us to reduce the carbon intensity by 15 to 20%, which is a very good. Now, adding all these, basically levers cumulatively, will be able to reduce our carbon intensity by 20 to 30%, right? Which will actually help us. By the time I think we'll go to the next journey of adopting the blue hydrogen / green hydrogen, I think this will keep us in a good space, and where the by the time we'll cover all these buckets. I think green hydrogen will be at the right tipping point, wherein from here 2-3 things that everyone is witnessing, and they are very keeping a very close eye on those improvements, or I would say technological improvement. First is about how the electrolyzers can become 15 to 20% efficient from where we are today, right? That's one. Second, on the solar, basically solar assets, how the solar asset can become 20 to 25% more, efficient in terms of the capex. and the operational efficiencies in terms of getting the efficiencies of the modules, right? So once we do this, I think we will be in a very good spot, and where we all are aspiring for the sweet spot of the levelized cost of hydrogen that we all are talking about. That is 1.5 to $2 per kg. That's where I think you can see a massive deployment of green hydrogen across all the sectors, not about iron and steel sector alone. You'll also see the deployment in cement. You'll see deployment in aluminium as well, and mobility, transportation. So I think so many green ammonia, the fertilizer sector, the refinery sector, all these sectors are going to see a massive deployment.
Thanks very much, Naveen. I think you've touched upon quite a lot of points, but if I can bring Rahul in. Rahul, y'all are looking for market opportunities, right? And clearly, Naveen is stating a lot of areas where, he can improve his efficiencies. It's, by taking steps themselves. But where do you see, green hydrogen playing a role today in decarbonizing steel? And where do you see this market evolving, in the next 5 to 7 years leading up to 2030?
Right. So let me pick up from where Deepak left. Okay. I think he gave a wish list for the cost of hydrogen, which will be good for steel. That's less than $1 or maybe $1. That's what I heard. I have a bad news for everyone. That's never happening. Okay. So because if we have to have $1 hydrogen, then definitely you need dirt cheap power. If you have dirt cheap power, that is to go to the industry first. That cannot go to produce hydrogen for producing steel. Okay. But the good news is that there is hope for hydrogen, and green hydrogen has arrived. It's the way we look at it. Okay? That's very important. And it's the responsibility of every individual, every stakeholder in the game to evaluate the overall cost of using one form of energy against the other form of energy very, very carefully. Okay? Because it can actually make or break the case for hydrogen. That's very important. On a lighter note, I would say that I was in a meeting with a very senior government official, and I don't know I should be saying that here or not, but he said that, okay, what can we do for Hygenco to bring down the cost of hydrogen? I said, great, stop taking bribe. That is it. So I'm not asking for subsidies, just stop taking bribes. So, I mean, that's very important. Let me give you some examples. Okay. When I say that we should look at the overall cost of using fossil fuel, what does that mean? So there are certain low-hanging fruits in steel industry, particularly in steel processing lines, where there's ample use of hydrogen. You take off galvanizing line, you take off example of annealing line. They use a lot of hydrogen. What is their source of hydrogen? Most of them, they use hydrogen from ammonia cracking. Some of them have now switched to small steam methane reformers. Now, if you look at all of these applications, there is a definite case for green hydrogen because on day one, it is competitive. I can give you example of just one application. For example, annealing. Now there are, different kinds of annealing furnaces, but let's say there is a continuous annealing line and there is a bell annealing furnace. Now, if a customer has a continuous annealing line and a bell annealing furnace, bell annealing would consume maybe just 8 to 9% of the overall hydrogen consumption of the overall, the finishing line. But if you switch from ammonia to hydrogen, and then you look at the economics of it, okay, which means you are not feeding producer gas, which is a mixture of nitrogen and hydrogen and ammonia into your furnace. You are just feeding pure hydrogen. That simply changes your productivity by plus 10%. That saves you power by plus 8%, okay, minus 8%, which means, for the overall annealing line, hydrogen is free. That is something which the steel industry needs to look into. All of these electrolyzers, they produce a lot of oxygen. And you need to now adopt and embrace oxy-combustion wholeheartedly. You cannot be saying that, okay, I need to modify my furnace, I need to do this or that, whatever. I mean, if it is a reheat furnace, go for oxy-combustion. Increase your productivity. And that is how you'll be able to prove that green hydrogen is competitive. Otherwise, I mean, it's a very difficult process. And I am, I think that the time will come. And last but not the least, the most important thing is wherever these steel plants are there, I mean, people should visit those places. You must have heard a lot about the AQI of Delhi, Gurgaon, right? Just go to these places and then look at the human cost of gray energy or gray steel making process. Then it will never look at, I mean, you cannot say that this is hard to abate. This is must to abate. Okay, that's very important. And so I will rest my case there and let other speakers come in.
Rahul, thank you very much. I think, you put things back into perspective as to why we are doing this in the first place, right? We are all talking about green hydrogen only because it's an emergency for climate and we need to reduce emissions. And you've also highlighted the, human costs associated with, with the industry. But, I love to, go back into something you raised about increasing productivity in the steel sector. Pardon me because I'm not an engineer or a scientist, so whatever you said went a little bit over my head. But we're going to write this down and come back to you. And if anybody in the audience has more questions on this, please put it in the chat box. We'll try and address this in the last section of this webinar. But Professor, over to you. You've heard the two gentlemen from industry speak about several levers that they could use, ways that they can reduce, they can reuse, improve efficiencies. But coming from the academic perspective, where do you see challenges in scale and applications?
Yeah, I think scale is something which we need to really be cautious about. The bigs really use a large, I should say, amount of coal, or to substitute that, you need quite a bit of other resources which has to be really looked at. But there are also TRI plants which are at small scale in a very large number. I think these are some things wherein at one end, I think if you really look at the reports which are being really floated, maybe one way to look at is, can we really go through the natural gas route through that one? And many of these are not even connected through natural gas. And for somebody move to natural gas using a rotary or some similar type of DRI process, probably I think is not going to be a feasible solution as on date. This is what the industry talks about because of the cost involved and various other things which go along with that one. Keeping that in mind, probably I think if there are any new technologies, I mean, Indian industries would jump the moment they see both some economics linked to the kind of overall maybe the program what government of India is wanting to bring out in terms of greening various sectors. And what I would love to look at is maybe small is beautiful is also there. There are various applications wherein we can really look at capacities, maybe smaller capacity, not the big ones. We should see whether there are alternate sources. There are many such things which are happening. For the big ones, maybe one can really look at what is a partial substitution which can do. I'm talking from the perspective of what is going to be done through some technologies which have been really looking at, because I know that this can really make a big difference in terms of both economics as well as probably the overall needs of the country in terms of decarbonizing the sector. Only thing which probably is required is demonstration, because I've been involved in technology transfer within this country and outside the country. Any new technology which is indigenous, we need industries to touch, feel, I mean, do everything to see that they are safe to go ahead. I think that's the space wherein we need to move together, and towards that we have been working at IISc to try to see whether we will be able to go and reach that stage. And I believe in a very near time we should be able to showcase. People should visit IISc and be able to see a DRI process using biomass as a resource. I think that's where we are. Any amount of discussions or presentations will bring in education to the system. I'm not trying to say no. Maybe seeing is believing, and trying to show the economics on that is also very big. We know that it can be extremely economical even at small scale, except that we need to put them together and show the industry as this can happen. I think keeping that in mind and looking at various other things which people have spoken about in terms of improving the overall efficiencies, yes, there is something which can really happen on existing systems to see whether we will be able to improve the broadly the efficiency to reduce the carbon footprint. I think this is something which I believe, based on the limited exposure what we have seen in the industry, this can happen. This needs a little more dedicated group to look at and try to see whether something can happen.
Professor, thank you for your comments. I think this whole discussion is a good example of academia and industry coming together to find solutions, and that's something we try to bring about here. Deepak, over to you. Professor touched upon some of the technology and challenges in scaling these technologies. But in CEW, you've done your research. The existing outlay. That a lot of them don't have these. Most of them are using traditional methods, right? You highlighted some aspects of capex involved, but in reality, how much decarbonization can happen in the next 6 to 7 years in the industry with what's available?
Yeah. So, so we released a report last year on this aspect, Nishant. We basically developed a marginal abatement cost for the entire steel sector in India, which sort of, looked at all decarbonization levers which are possible. So our research primarily indicates that with the use of energy efficiency, and Naveen, he talked about most of the energy efficiency technologies which can be used for mitigating emissions. So around 10 to 15% reduction is possible. 10% for some plants, 15% for other plants. Beyond energy efficiency and material efficiency, again, Naveen sort of talked about is the role of renewable energy, and renewable energy has a very critical role to play. Although we're talking about hydrogen today, but renewable energy can significantly abate emissions from the India's the iron and steel sector. We estimate around further 15 to 20% reduction through through renewable energy. Beyond renewable energy, things start getting tricky, right? So if you look at blast furnaces, for example, very little role to sort of start blending in alternative fuels because hydrogen, for example, you saw in the slide which I presented, 6 to 8% reduction in terms of emissions. Again, biomass can be used, but again, the amount of biomass that you can blend in blast furnaces are very low, right? So through the use of alternative fuels, we are looking at 6% reduction based on the current technology mix in India. Everything else, everything beyond, let's say 10% energy efficiency, 20% renewable energy, 6% alternative fuels, everything else has to go through the CCUS pathway. And CCUS is very tricky because it's better to use hydrogen for producing DRI than using hydrogen for making CCU products. Because the cost of abatement that we are looking there is significantly higher than directly using DRI, right? The other challenge with CCU might become commercially viable at a green hydrogen cost. For example, let's say sustainable aviation fuel becomes commercially viable at around $1 a kg, which is very difficult, what Rahul also pointed out. But CCS will always have a positive cost externality, which what I imply here with CCS is, with CCU, if you break even, then you are not losing anything, you're not gaining anything, right? But with CCS, you are always paying a penalty of $30 to $50 per ton of CO2. That is the biggest challenge when it comes to decarbonizing the existing vintages of the technology that we have in India. So that's why the role of natural gas, and there were some comments in the chat box, the role of natural gas is critical because the natural gas enables you to seamlessly transition to green hydrogen. And the amount of hydrogen that you can start blending in depends on the cost of green hydrogen vis-a-vis the cost of natural gas, right? So the steel industry is not talking about natural gas today, primarily because they want gas at $6 to $8 per MMBTU. The delivered cost of gas to them will be around $14 to $16 per MMBTU, right? So that's why steel industry is not talking about it. In the Ministry of Steel report, which was released earlier, earlier this year, in fact, in the previous month, we developed a natural gas cost curve for India, right? So I'll give you some numbers. At a gas price of $8 per MMBTU, the steel industry is willing to consume 5 BCM of natural gas. 5 BCM is India consumes around 60 to 65 BCM of natural gas on an annual basis, right? So at $8 MMBTU, industry is willing to consume 5 BCM. At $9, it reduces to 0.5 BCM. And beyond $9.5, nobody is willing to offtake gas. But the good thing is there is a stick which is coming from the Indian carbon market, which means beyond a certain range, the steel industry will be paying a premium for mitigating emissions. So we estimate that at a carbon tax of around $30 a MMBTU, gas at around 11 to $11.5 per MMBTU should be commercially viable. So as so steel industries that have internal carbon pricing, for example, $30 to $40 per MMBTU, for them, natural gas will become commercially viable, and then they can seamlessly start transitioning to green hydrogen. But what is happening in India is, I talked about carbon markets, right? So today we are at around 2.54 average. We will move to 2.2, and 2.2 is achievable just with the use of energy efficiency, renewable energy, material efficiency, etc. But beyond 2030 is when things will start getting difficult for the steel industry as we start going into the CCUS domain. But beyond 2030 is when I expect the cost of green hydrogen to reduce significantly. So in the $1 price which I presented, right, that is for hydrogen blending in natural gas based shaft furnaces and also in blast furnaces. For a 100% hydrogen-based DRI, we are looking at a green hydrogen parity price of around 1.3 to $1.8 per kg, which I understand, Rahul, should be possible. 1.3 to 1.8 is possible. So beyond, let's say, 2030, if we can start thinking about hydrogen injection in shaft furnaces, transitioning to 100% hydrogen-based DRI at a hydrogen price of around 1.3 to $1.8 per kg, that is the timeline that we should be targeting, Nishant, right? Final comment on my end. What should we doing? What should we be doing till 2030? Should we be sitting idle? The answer is no. We should start, developing, having those experience. For example, the steel industry today does not have experience in using just hydrogen. They use hydrogen for producing steel, but they don't use just hydrogen for producing steel. So why not have a pilot of 100% hydrogen based DRI, something like hybrid, in the next 4 or 5 years, gain the experience, and when the cost of green hydrogen reduces, you can start putting in your MTPA scale green hydrogen based DRI plants.
Thanks, Deepak. I think you gave a good segue into this next segment where I want to look at what's the current demand for green hydrogen. But Rahul, I know I'll begin this segment with you. If you also want to begin with responding to what Deepak was saying, but if you could also touch upon where's the demand for green steel today, and where do you see opportunities? Rahul, you're on mute, Rahul.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So as you said, like our play is pure hydrogen, so I have limited understanding of the demand for green steel, but still I can let you know based on the pipeline of projects that we are chasing, right? So most of this demand actually is coming from European customers, and to a limited extent there are certain customers in India who want to go green, but apart from that, I mean, we don't see a lot of traction for green steel at a premium. That's very important, at a premium. So
And
I mean, definitely.
do you see opportunities or creation of demand with some of India's carbon markets coming into play, or in some export opportunities with CBAM?
Yeah, I mean, if you take the current internal voluntary carbon pricing that some of the companies have adopted, that's quite attractive, and that, I mean, in one shot can make green hydrogen competitive. So if that is the kind of carbon pricing we're going to see, I mean, that's very much possible.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rahul. Naveen, over to you, Naveen. I'm sure you're also talking to customers in your business. So where are the sectors where demand is coming, and where are the geographies as well? But also, if you could highlight within India, where's the demand for green steel, or who's ready to pay a premium?
So, Nishant, I think it's a very good question. See, if we have to really talk about making the blue/green hydrogen, or low carbon emission steel or green steel possible, we have to basically, there are two most important enablers. The first is the current prices. We talked about that. And second is also the willingness to pay. So when a consumer will have the willingness to pay a green premium, of course, all the economics, this entire economics will just, start working toward really, start getting along with the overall supply demand. So that, having said that, I think if you talk about the customers per se, there are basically four type of customers that we have from the steel perspective. First is about The real estate, 55% of the steel goes into that sector, construction sector, as we say. Second is basically 25 odd percent goes into machinery, close to 25 odd percentage, basically goes into the automobile sector, right? So construction, automobile, and basically the machinery sector. These are the basically the top three sectors where the steel is split, the demand is split. Now, this is slightly now depending upon the growth of the country. This split can vary based on country to country and geography to geography. If you talk about China as an example, then these three things are uniformly split, right? So because they have already gone ahead for putting up their real estate, or the construction sector has already reached the maturity. India has to still sort of peak. The machinery sector is now sort of picking up there, and the automobile sector is also sort of basically stagnant around 25-26%. So in India, it is basically, this is the overall split. Now, out of these three customers, the customer that is leading the pack, or that will be leading the pack, that is the automobile customers. Because based on the studies, based on the work that we have done with all the customers, and one of our subsidiary company is putting up one of the world's largest green hydrogenated steel plant in Oman. So when we spoke to all these customers, and based on the analysis that we have done, the final consumer like you and me, who have to really pay the incremental value or the incremental money from our pocket, if we source or buy a car made from green steel, it is less than 1%. So meaning, if someone is buying a car made from green steel of, let's say, 30-40,000 euros, then the incremental money that has to go from our pocket, it is 2,000 to 3,000 euros, which is nothing, right? Same goes for the consumer durables. Consumer durable also, if we intend to buy a washing machine made from green steel, the incremental capex, or the incremental money that we as a consumer has to pay, it is hardly 30 to 40 euros, right? So this is the segment that is leading the pack, and they intend to source close to 10 odd percent as green steel by 2030. That is in all the leading basically automobile makers. Now, this number of 10%, it is not from India. The Indian automobile have to still join the party. They have to also show in their annual report, or they have to make a pledge that yes, that is how they want to go. And eventually, direction of the government and this customer, eventually that will start moving toward this goal. That in the government procurement, they have to make 5% or 5 to 10%, sourcing of the green steel / low carbon emission steel. Now, green steel is the ultimate goal, but before that, we are talking about the low carbon emission steel, and the various levers that we have spoken. All these levers will be taking us from the gray / black steel to the low carbon emission steel. That's the first one to really start doing this transition. One thing is very important here. Everybody is either when we talk or when we basically join these basically events, everybody is talking about transition. And when everybody is talking about transition, it is like from 0 to 1 binary digit. So I want to tell the audience and also everyone that we are doing a transition, not a transformation. Tomorrow, it is not from gray black today, tomorrow green steel. So it is a transition. It's a marathon. We have to go a stepwise approach, and this stepwise approach is going to really take us to where we want to go eventually, right? So all these steps, the short to medium to long term, that is where we have to go. Second point, before we hit the silver bullet, as Deepak also mentioned about the sweet spot of sub 1.5 to $2 per kg. That's the sweet spot where everybody will join the bandwagon of green hydrogen. The steps that we have to take before to that, I think that will take us a good 5-6 years, about the operational efficiency, the oxy combustion, which Rahul spoke about, the overall sort of utilization of these, bringing the operational efficiency, the digitalization, all the renewable energy. See, if you see the overall crux, hydrogen is also 70%. The cost of hydrogen is coming from energy, the green electricity. So that's, to me, I think is the crux. If we can think about a situation right now, the carbon intensity of our grid, it is 750 kgs of CO2 per megawatt, right? If we can bring this 750 kgs to 400 kgs or 350 kgs, we are done. We are 30%, we are done, right? Now, when we compare our processes with Nordic countries or with European countries, there the carbon intensity of the grid is whopping 40 to 50 kgs of CO2 per megawatt. You see the advantages that we have. Now, once you have your grid with the lowest or lower carbon intensity. Second, once your grid is resilient or robust to take all the excess energy that we are going to create during the daytime, the curtailment. Once you have that resilience in the grid, rest of the things, whether you make green ammonia, green hydrogen or green methanol, all those things are in, they will follow, right? So that's why this is super important that we sort of on our side, but the renewable solar, the wind, the batteries prices are coming down, and the grid, once the grid is available, once we make it more resilient, rest of the things will, right? So the second bucket is about the utilization, carbon capture. Now, Deepak made a very important point about the utilization. So utilization is still a sort of we have to still see the maturity, the scalability of these technologies. And again, in most of the downstream chemicals that you are going to make from this CO2, hydrogen has an important role, right? It is key building block. So ultimately, we are jumping into or going into the blue hydrogen / green hydrogen. If you have to really make it work, important is if government and all the agencies, director of hydrocarbon plus oil gas ministry, I think if they can focus on the systemic and try to develop the permanent sinks. If you see India as a country, we have got close to 700 to 800. There's a potential of 700 to 800 gigatons of permanent storage, right? Now, if we can bring this, basically this permanent storage or sequestration, as we call, or enhance oil recovery, or find out the rocks, pedioritic rocks or basaltic rocks, these will act as a permanent sink. And as Deepak has said, the marginal cost of abatement, if we go with this, it is hardly $25 to $30 a ton, right? So once you reach to the carbon price of $25 a ton, I think we just break even and we start all these technology will start making sense. And the last point from my side, it is about the upside that we have. The moment we make this thing permanent sinks, the storage part effective, we'll be able to reduce the carbon intensity by a whopping 40 odd percent. So CPS along with renewable energy, operational efficiency, energy efficiency, right? If we just take all these things into a bucket, we are 70 to 80% done. And then the hydrogen will also go in parallel, and eventually hydrogen. See, as Deepak has said, we have. If you see the maturity and the scalability of these projects all across the globe, India, the kind of advantage India is having because of the lower levelized cost of energy, it is massive. Most of the refineries and fertilizer now in ministry has mandated that they have to blend 5% hydrogen along with their gray hydrogen. So this mandate itself will create a massive ecosystem of green hydrogen. 30,000 tons of green hydrogen per annum, 40,000 tons of green hydrogen. These are big numbers. These are like, close to putting up a 200 megawatt, 300 megawatt of electrolyzer in one shot, right? So what this will provide the ecosystem for deployment. Number two, it will also give us an ecosystem of learning. We'll start to see the synchronization of renewable energy, the intermittency and battery along with this electrolyzer, how we can better, sort of increase their efficiencies, how we can do the synchronization of this electrolyzer with the process integration. All this interface engineering will also come into picture. Also, we'll develop the skill. That is super. That this is also the area where we have to also talk about. Skill development is super important. We have to develop the system, the engineers who can also work, who can do the operation maintenance on these areas. So I think these are the things that can be developed. Once we have these, I would say basically a commercial level of small size commercial level of projects. Once we are through with this, then I think and it will also motivate people, the tier 2, tier 3 industry. It will also motivate them because they are the fence sitters, according to me. They are seeing whether we are doing what the big daddies or the big boys in the market, what they are doing. The moment they'll see, look, these guys are doing it. It is successful. Hydrogen is not a big thing, but yes, it is a thing that can be. The risk is not much. It is easily doable. The price is there, support from the government, carbon prices, willingness to pay, then we are through.
Thanks very much, Naveen. It's clear that in the steel sector, it's not about replacing, hydrogen or any other gas with green hydrogen. It's about the whole ecosystem development. And I think, you raise some beautiful points here. For India, it's an opportunity, right? Never before in, for any other industry or technology, we've been at the forefront as we are with green hydrogen and, and its related development. But also, going back to the question, which is demand, automobile sector seems to be the low hanging fruit for green steel, right? Even in H2 green steel, you saw a lot of offtake that was signed off by automobile manufacturers. And you were right, the steel is only 14%, of the entire car, and it's a small percentage. Even the 2,000 euros might look big, but it could be when you start paying monthly installments, it's such a minuscule amount. But if you want to add something more, Naveen, you raised your hand.
Yes, so sorry. Yeah, yes. This actually it is 200 basically euros, 2,000 euros. And when we talk about see the CBAM part, I think there's a huge opportunity. I want to just tell you and tell the audience that the green steel demand in Europe, the green steel demand in Europe is massive, 100 million tons by 2030. Right? By 2030, 100 million ton. Now, if you take all the announced capacities by the global steel makers, Gator, ST Green Steel, and ThyssenKrupp, Tata Steel, they won't be able to reach beyond 10 to 15 million ton by 2030, right? So now, if we take a very pessimistic scenario of let's say 50%, let's say 50 million ton demand will be there, 10 to 15 million ton will come from Europe. What about the remaining 35 million tons? From where it will come? So Middle East, the Asia part, the Asian countries are going to play an important role in trying to this demand. And that's why it is an amazing opportunity. We, as
Then
integrated steel makers in India, should not bring in the fear factor. It is an, I think, opportunity for a century.
thanks very much, Naveen. I think Rahul, I know you didn't have much to add, but I hope you had a lot to take away from this discussion. But any comments from you or Professor Dasapa or Deepak before we open to the audience?
I think, I mean, all the statistics that we are hearing from Mr. Naveen is quite enlightening, and to say the least. And definitely, I mean, we need to go a long way for full-fledged, I mean, realizing the full potential of green hydrogen steel industry.
Thanks, Rahul, and you and your company is doing great work, and good luck on this journey. Deepak, Professor Dasapa, any closing remarks or comments?
Maybe I think it's a question of moving slow, but I think and study is what we need to really look at. And this is a sector which is not easy to penetrate because there are structured in or maybe there are very established industry at one end, big players. There are also small players who are there. I think carrying them is not going to be easy. I think we need to have various options in terms of exploring and bringing them on board to see whether the entire thing can be made into a affordable solution at the end of the day. I think this is something which we need to do. May not be easy, but I think we need to really take the journey beyond whatever we are seeing today.
Thank you, Professor. Deepak, should I open it for the audience? Unless you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. You should be able to switch on your mics if you're in the audience. I know somebody had your hand up. If you guys want to come in now, this is your chance. Otherwise, we'll go through some questions in the chat.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Praveen. Yes. Go on. Was it Chakrapani?
Yes. Good afternoon to all. Happy Hydrogen Day to all, for all the
Thank you.
panelists, for Nishant and for everyone. I had a question, for the small pigment plants, are there any economical solution? I'm sure it is very difficult, but is there any economical solution for the smaller plant who are going to start in the future for looking at some kind of decarbonization? Thank you. Yes.
So, Mr. Karmani, let me just give my thoughts, and then maybe Deepak can add on. See, green pig iron. See, if you see the future of the industry, I think we will be definitely short on the metallics part of it, whether it is green HBI or you talk about green pig iron, or you talk about the scrap part, right? Going forward, this will be, basically, we will be short on materials. Now you talk about the green HBI. Now, since India don't have a better or a high grade iron ore, it will definitely be a constraint until unless we have a technology, better technology of beneficiation or anywhere where we can enrich the existing 63, 64% iron ore, right? Scrap, because of our historical per capita, steel consumption, the scrap availability is going to be a question mark and a constraint. And we won't be able to import as well because all the countries, they are going to set their house in order before they will. So they will put a guardrail because that is the easiest lever for them to decarbonize. So that is the second one. Third is about the pig iron. So according to me, I think pig iron can definitely, green pig iron can play an important role. What are the levers? The levers will be, as we have discussed, the operational efficiency, getting a better, good quality iron ore, how you can beneficiate that, use the renewable energy, operational efficiency. These are the only thing at that level that can be done. And of course, at the pig iron level also, we have seen what Deepak has suggested. We can go up to 15 kgs of hydrogen, right? So I think from medium to long term, there will be technologies where you have to, I think hydrogen is going to be the solution. If we have to see the widespread reduction in the carbon intensity in this sector, what we say possible to abate, hard to abate, we want to make it possible to abate. We have to make hydrogen as our friend. Whether we make it today, not possible. Medium term, partially possible. Long term, yes. Once we hit this 1.5 to $2 per kg, I think there will be a widespread. So these, according to me, I think we have to walk, as Professor Dasapa rightly said, slow and steady. Watch the things around, and then you take this transition.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the panel would like to answer, add on?
Yeah, so Nishant, I can quickly add in here. So the definition of green steel is still being debated globally, right? So when we say green steel, it is basically hydrogen-based steel. But to the question from the audience, right? The discussion about what is the definition of green pig iron, that will be my first question to him. But what is happening internationally, and so IEA has proposed a sliding scale basis. They have given certain emission intensity targets. And if you are able to sort of be below the emission intensity targets which have been set for the for sliding scale proposed by IEA, then perhaps you can qualify for the IEA definition of a low emission intensity steel, or I don't know whether they have low emission intensity iron, but you can definitely qualify for that that much amount of green iron or green steel which can be sold. And the levers are what Naveen mentioned, basically energy efficiency, material efficiency, alternative fuels and renewable energy. So if by using all this, if you can produce steel which is less than 2 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel, then you can be sort of qualify for the low emission intensity steel as per the IEA definition.
Thanks, Deepak. Praveen, would you like to come in? Praveen J, yes, please.
Sure. Yes, thank you. Thank you for this great insights that has come from the panel. I have a two-part question. Right now, even the LCOH that we consider for green hydrogen in India is being debated, while it ranges from $4 to it can go up to $7. My question would be, what would be the current economics for LCOH right now in India? And if we talk about using it in steel, the storage component would further add a lot of issues on that front. So are there any solutions that is being proposed when we talk about captive usage on that front? Thank you.
So maybe let me just give my thoughts. See, with the current levelized cost of energy that we have in India, I think we are somewhere around 3.5 to $4 per kg of green hydrogen, right? Now, this also depends on the geography. It also depends upon the size of the plant, size of the project that you are putting up, right? And also it also depends on what is the desired use of the green hydrogen. You want it for 7-8 hours, or you want it round the clock, or intermittency versus round the clock. I think these are the factors which eventually define the overall or determine the overall levelized cost of hydrogen. But if we assume that the round the clock availability is there as a from the consumer, and we also assume that yes, you are sort of bringing the electrons, and India actually we have got a right now the grid is pretty good, and it has to be augmented, as I said in my previous discussion. If for making the green hydrogen, there is a the interstate transmission system. There is zero charge if you are going to generate green hydrogen. So that part is well taken care of. So considering this, I think if because the solar prices have almost come to a level of close to 1.5 to 2 rupees. Considering that, I think there is a good possibility that we can hit easily $2.5 to $3 per kg. Right, going forward, there will be definitely a lot of improvement in terms of, as I said, electrolyzer efficiency is super important. We have to go from here, from the existing 60 to 65% to 70 to 75% of the efficiencies. Second, we have to also see how we can better the overall metal of construction, because if you talk about the PEM electrolyzer, the proton exchange membrane electrolyzers, they require rare earth metals, right? Iridium, lanthanum, all these rare earth metals. So we have to sort of see how we can sort of basically shift, or how we can better the overall metal of construction, where we can reduce our dependency on these rare earth metals, right? Then the last part is also all the efficiencies on the solar part as well. So I think considering this, I strongly believe that by 2030, I think there is a very good possibility that we'll be able to hit $2.5 per kg. Very good possibility. It is not theoretical, but there is a very good possibility that we are able to hit. And even considering today's prices as well, when the consumer like us steel, where we require a green hydrogen round the clock, right? And the size of the project is big. Today also there is a very good possibility that we can hit $2.5 per kg. If we can get a grant or subsidies or support from the government, then I think we can. Today also, I think there is a good chance that we can hit $2 or slightly higher to $2 per kg. Maybe Rahul, you want to add something here?
I just heard the question that the cost of green hydrogen is somewhere around $7, right? Is that the number I heard? Did somebody say that?
I think
No.
Naveen was mentioning about
The
4 to
other-
5, not
No, the
$4.
question-
No.
The
I'm
question.
sorry. I did not mention $7, but
No,
I think
I'm referring to the question. The question.
Yeah. Jay, would you like to come in? Did you mention that?
No, the number that I mentioned was it ranges across different sources from $4 to $7. So,
Yeah.
what would be on an average industrial cost that would happen, and a bit more in terms of how would cost of storage and transportation impact the overall plant economics is what my larger question was.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So the overall cost of green hydrogen, if we are talking about large scale deployment for say blast furnace application and smelting kind of a application, okay, it will be on the lower side of $4.5 kg, maybe much lower, without counting in a lot of subsidies. Okay, only some conveniences like transmission charges, waivers, and all of that. Okay. So that is where we stand today, and that's where I started by saying that green hydrogen has arrived. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, when I'm giving this number, this includes storage. Okay, this includes storage, round the clock supply of hydrogen. So that is very important. And when I'm saying storage, let me also qualify the word that I'm talking about hydrogen storage, not energy storage. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Rahul. If I can have Dr. Chandrakar as the last question for this session. Please, Doctor, if you could unmute your mic and speak.
Can I have another question, if possible?
1 second, Chakrapani. Dr. Chandrakar, can you unmute yourself? I know you've been most active in the group chat. Okay, Chakrapani, it's your turn, please.
Yeah, okay. We all are discussing about, we have Professor Dasappa, who gave a very good presentation on the other aspect of the biomass. So I have a question to him. We all keep talking about electrolysis, cost of green hydrogen, solar, and all those things. That biomass-based application of hydrogen in the steel sector, any global references or any case studies which are like commercially completed or at least undergoing something, if you can give some lights on it, that will be very good for encouraging for going for that sector as well. Thank you.
Maybe this is also, sorry to say, this is also mindset. If somebody does elsewhere, I think we adopt it very easily. This is what is happening to biomass in our country. And there are indigenous technologies. This can happen. Probably, I think now this is the time that we need to really adopt to certain things what could be there, and the government of India is wanting to look at one end of the spectrum to see how much of indigenization can take place. And I'm not against any other things, but there should be a level playing field for any of these things. This is where we are struggling. We are struggling to see that whether some within course, the kind of lobby which is going on the other sector should also come into biomass, which is not happening. Yes, people have been attempting to do this one. And to some extent, which I want to say that the technology what has been developed in India probably cuts across various, I should say, scientific and technological challenges, which probably is one of those multi-fueled capabilities. I would like to say that maybe in some time we ourselves will showcase something both within the country and outside the country. Maybe if industries are forthcoming to take some risks, I think we are there to work towards that.
Thanks, Professor. And Rahul, one last question to you. It's very clear that you're not going to make green hydrogen and transport it, to some of these sources. In terms of existing steel plants or existing domestic clusters, do you think the government needs to do more to enable land allotments and create this ecosystem for more domestic demand in these other industries?
Yeah, I think there has to be a complete percolation of government's vision, central government's vision on green hydrogen, down to the last person or authority in the hierarchy. Because I mean, with all good intentions, whatever policies are being done, it's taking time to actually take shape on the ground. So again, I say, I mean, with all good intentions, I mean, the execution also needs to match up with the speed, which I mean, that will can go a long way in facilitating the process.
Thanks, Rahul. I think we'll bring in these recommendations. Dr. Chandrakar, please.
Thank you very much, Nishant. Very dynamic panel, I should say, and very, very good overview from the professor and the industry faculty as well, and Deepak ji from CEW. Looking at, I think I've been studying the hydrogen sector for the last 6 months, as if it's been God to me. Like people think I've quit my God and I've taken up hydrogen. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to get into conversations. I've spoken to Professor Dasappa as well on numerous occasions. I think the quality of conversations we are having within this country and with everybody else in the rest of the world isn't there, and that's what my last comment is about. We are, I think, reacting. We are kind of panicking. We are kind of rushing somewhere. All of those things, I think, with folks like the panelists here, I think we could just come and make a roadmap of sorts. And I think we are afraid of failure. I think this is a very strange thing I found in the ICGH. My first question to the minister, Mr. Balla, was, what are the blind spots? Are we working hard enough to be? I mean, not to be worried about failure. And he kind of took umbrage to it, but thanks to Sunita Sanyal and others came afterwards, reinforced this. I think we're afraid of failure. We're afraid of optics. And I think this is what, I mean, one of the things maybe what Dr. Dasappa is also saying, our mindsets are not driven from quality and excellence from what we have within us. Indians are the innovators of the world. It's very clear, but why are we not... Thank you, Professor Dasappa, for that comment. But I think we need to change that. And yeah, go ahead, Naveen. I'll hold my peace now.
Absolutely. And I think a good question, but I have a slightly different approach. Like I travel globally, and because of, as I said, our sister company putting up this world's largest green hydrogen energy plant in Oman, happened to travel, across the globe in last 1.5 years, 2 years, and I've seen the kind of, I think, optimism that we have in our country, the kind of awareness that we have in our country, and actually the hard to beat sector really sort of trying to join the bandwagon. It's not there actually, outside India. And when I say it's not there, you talk about the big daddies of iron and steel industry who have ruled the world for almost not for 1 year, for decades. You talk about ThyssenKrupp of the world, almost at the at an edge where it can be sold off. Tata Steel, what is happening at Port Talbot plant in UK? And ArcelorMittal is trying to move from Europe to Latin America. So as for Liberty Steel, most of the plants are really struggling. So I add, that is one. Second, the grant, the subsidies that these plants, these companies are getting from the European Union, right? Billions of euros going, and still they are thinking about. They are thinking which way. It's a chicken and egg story. Which to basically, well, shall we focus on renewable electrons or electricity, or we go straightway to hydrogen or blue hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, different things. And now, so they were like close to 50 odd guys who started running this race around 1.5 to 2 years back, and now we have a good 3 4 guys who are slow and steady again, as Professor the Super saying. They are saying that yes, we are going to run this race till the end. I think running the race to the end is super important. So I must compliment, and I always make this example globally, that the kind of work that we are doing. See, again, we are, in India, we are basically trying to sort of set up the ecosystem that is super important. There's the renewable energy in this case, and we are actually inching toward that. We are at 143 gigawatt at this point of time, solar, wind. We are actually 7 gigawatt nuclear, going to add another 7 or gigawatt by 2030, 14 gigawatt nuclear, hydropower close to 14 or gigawatt. I think we are all very good. The platform is so great to really nail this thing down. And going forward, I think it's an opportunity for ages. We don't have to be worried about it. It's an opportunity for us. Nothing is going to put pressure on us. That look, CBAM is going to come. You start panicking. I'm saying I'm not panicking. If CBAM at all will be on my head, I will say what I will lose. I will lose 2% of my export in Europe, but I have a super strong demand in my country itself, right? Or I can go for Southeast Asia. I can go Central Asia. I can go West Asia. So many demand is there. So I think iron steel industry is taking into stride, and hard to beat industry, I think in India they are doing very good. And I strongly believe that we are on the right track, as we always believe this frugal engineering we talk about, that we are all are proud of. I think this frugal engineering is where will take us, where it will be. So I think we started this journey in last 1.5 years, 2 years back, but the kind of momentum that we are picking up is great as compared to the western part of the world or the other guys who have started this journey around 7 years back, but they are still in a wait and watch policy. They are still in a deep introspection mode. That's my view.
Thanks, Naveen, with those with those positive remarks. Let me also acknowledge them, because being a global organization, we haven't seen this kind of development anywhere else, and even response from industry. Right, we've doubled our response. We've doubled what the government has done. Right, everywhere else they're waiting for governments to take action, but in India, the government has done very little for so much to happen within. And I think this is one sector and one industry where, as a country, as a society, we are, in the front seat, maybe second to China today, but in the next 5 years or within the decade, we will be in par with China, and we will eventually, overtake them in this. So with that, thank you, gentlemen, for, taking your time out and joining us as panelists, and the rest of y'all who've stayed until the very end. If you have more questions, please feel free to write to us, and we'll continue bringing in these webinars every month. And next month, we're looking at, applications in the transport sector, and we have some, researchers from the US who are joining us, who worked on some of the policies there and done some research in the space. And if you'd like us to do more curated sessions. I can see a lot of question and answers, and if you want certain experts that we should bring to you to have just a Q&A session on the topic, we are very happy to do that. With that, thanks once again to everyone who've joined us today, and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.